appreciate all of y'all being here. We have several very good talks for you, so I'm going to go ahead and exit this. Unfortunately, Dr. Dario Chavez wasn't able to be with us this morning. So in the middle of the night, he emailed me his presentation, and we were able to get it loaded, and everything's working properly. But he prepared his presentation. He's been working with this Smart Irrigation PCHAP, and so I'm actually going to go ahead and play that, and we'll hear what he has to say. It should be about 25, 28 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. First, I want to thank the organizer committee to allow me to present this Smart Irrigation PCHAP. This is a project that has been going for a few years now. It was an interesting project because we wanted to be able to produce something deliverable and practical to the growers in the southeastern U.S. My name is Dario Chavez. I'm an associate professor in peach research and extension at the Department of Horticulture. And this is the work of several collaborators, and in special I want to mention Srijana Tapamagar, that is my PhD student that did most of the work. Irrigation scheduling for peach production. So previous study findings in our program was that if you irrigate early from establishment, your trees are basically larger in comparison with non-irrigated trees. And also you get a gain in yield and fruit production that would be a gain overall in general for your orchard. But one thing that we always had issues with is there was the lack of irrigation scheduling knowledge. If you try to find information about this irrigation scheduling for peach, we really don't know how much water to apply or when to irrigate. So the objective was to develop a proper irrigation scheduling practice for peach production based on a crop water requirement. The idea basically was to be able to see at the peach plant and think on the conditions that peach plants are growing, basically how much transpiration the plant is having, how much rainfall and irrigation are coming down, how much runoff of that rain or irrigation, how much infiltration on the soil, and how much is evaporation. Basically, just looking at the overall comprehensive aspect of a crop requirement. So the smart irrigation apps are smartphone-based apps, and here are a few examples of the ones that are available for cotton, citrus, avocado, strawberries. And they are a tool to schedule real-time irrigation. What it means by that is that you can use the crop evapotranspiration, so what's happening with the crop at that moment, and then we use a soil water balance method, also how much water is available in the soil. The interesting thing is that they're popular, free, and highly efficient. Now, when you think about the smart irrigation PCHAP development, what we need to think about is that it's based on a crop evapotranspiration. This means that it just basically uses a basic equation, the Penman-Montaigne FOA 56 equation. What it does is it's calculated the crop evapotranspiration based on the reference crop evapotranspiration, and this reference crop is based on a weather station or is somewhere that you can calculate that, or is given to you by weather stations or local sites. And then the KC, that's the crop coefficient. And this is basically a number that determines what is the crop coefficient need for a specific crop or plant species. So peach has one general crop coefficient curve that was developed by FOA as well. But there's other data out there that can be used also to infer or create a curve for use. So the basic principle of the PCHAP is that you have a field information, that is the area of the ground that you want to cover, the soil type that you have, the spacing. What I mean by spacing is the row spacing, or basically between rows, and spacing between trees. The root depth is actually something that's already input in the app, and this is based on publications out there for peaches. And then irrigation details. What it means by that is how many lines are you going to have in a row? What is the delivery rate of that line? Do you have a micro sprinkler or a drip? Now, the weather information is the weather forecast, rainfall, and the reference evapotranspiration. Again, the reference evapotranspiration, generally speaking, can be obtained for looking at weather stations locally or other type of information. So with the field information, what the app does is calculates the area to be irrigated, or the acres. And with the weather information, what we get is the amount of the evapotranspiration in inches. Putting all this together, you are able to calculate the irrigation requirement that we need to put in for the crop. And then we can calculate also the irrigation duration based on your system. So basically, your app will give you, for example, for the pitch app, it will give you notifications that will tell you a rain event of how many inches was observed in this field. Also, it tells you how much to irrigate per event, and this per event means whatever days you decided to set up your schedule, and so on. Now, when you think about the Smart Irrigation Pitch app, and in this case it's a demo, what you normally will have as a starting point is when you open the app, you will have first to start a new field, and then you will create a new farm or field. It will open a map interface on Google where you can actually drop a pin of the location, and then it will calculate latitude and longitude for that location. And then finally, you will be able to add a field name, the tree age of your trees of your orchard, and then you can also put the variety. Either you add the name of the variety, or you just put a name of whatever varieties you have in there. And then you have the area of the amount of acreage that your irrigation block comprises of, and the soil type. And again, all of these are used to calculate a good estimation for your characteristics. Now, in the next step, you have a selection of the weather data source. Again, it's based on the location or whether the requirements to your location. So it will look at the nearest weather station. So for example, here in the app, we have selected as the new location, Griffin, Georgia. So the first stations that appear are basically located in Griffin. And then there is a Williamson weather station, and then Jonesboro weather station. But then there is something also else that's called the National Weather Data Grid. What it means is that if you are in Alabama or you are in South Carolina and you want to try out this app, and I will encourage you to do so, and please let me know too, because I will be interested to work with you if there is any issues also to see how it's doing for you. So you can click the National Weather Data Grid, and automatically the app will actually enter the data calculated by models for different regions of the country and locations as well. And it's pretty good data. The nice thing is that you don't need to have the weather stations. Some states don't have the weather station systems, so this allows you to be able to calculate a reference evapotranspiration that will be used, and also rainfall events that will be used for your app calculation. In the case of the variety selection, this is just something that I added on. It has the list of popular peach varieties and ripening period, but you can add other things as well. The next step is very important to be able to calculate correctly how much time you want to irrigate. So the irrigation system details. In this case, the type, it can be a single line of drip irrigation, a double line, or micro sprinkler. The efficiency of this system, in this case, for example, 90% efficiency if it's drip, or whatever your irrigation engineer that installed the irrigation can tell you that it's actually your system. You need an irrigation rate, In this case, it's for the drip line. So it's based on 100 feet row. But you can also use a rate per emitter as well. And then you have the minutes to pressurize the system, and this will be added on to your irrigation recommendation. The emitter spacing, for example, in the case of the drip irrigation, in the case of the micro sprinkler, you would just use basically the number of trees, right? The distance between rows, what's the spacing between your rows, and then what is the distance between trees. So you will calculate the irrigated area with that information. And then the week events. What I mean by week events is basically you can decide how many events of irrigation you want to have a week. So for example, here you can put the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. Or in this case, we were doing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then there is a water conservation one. What it is irrigation replace 100% of estimated water losses, or just seasonal water savings, that is 75% of the estimated water losses from soil when rainfall exceeds water losses, or year-round water savings, that is basically replaces 75% across the board. Now, what you will get in the main screen Smart Irrigation Pitch app is the list of fields registered. So for example, here we have 4, I believe, and you can put a different name. It will tell you, for example, it's 1.7 acres, and it's a July Prince variety. And it's a 4-year and above, and if you click on it, it will tell you a little more information. So you have 100% canopy coverage. And then it will tell you that you want to irrigate Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you have to irrigate, it will tell you a time. In this case, it was just an example, so the time that you're getting here is quite minimal. But it will tell you like 5 hours, 6 hours. And also, if there is a rainfall event, it will tell you that in the last 5 days, you have had that many inches of irrigation, and you should consider modifying your irrigation event based on the rainfall that you got. So it will tell you, for example, if you have an irrigation recommendation of 2 hours, it will tell you that you can reduce your irrigation by 30 minutes or 45 minutes, equivalent to the rainfall that you got. So what we decided to do is, once we had a demo app, we decided to do some field evaluations, in this case in a young orchard and a mature orchard. In the case of the young orchard, we established this orchard in 2020. It is a July Prince cultivar grafted onto Guardian and MP29 rootstocks. And what we did is we tested 3 different irrigation methods: the irrigation app, the sensor-based irrigation, and the control. And in this case, the control is the non-irrigated plot. What we wanted to do is basically we wanted to again test that results that we got in previous experiment, that we found that basically if we have irrigation since establishment, plants grow bigger, healthier, and also produce earlier yield and higher yields as well. So in the case of the irrigation app, again, you have your irrigation app. You can see that this micro sprinkler in this case, and irrigate for how much. And there was expected acquired rainfall of the previous days is 1.3 inches, and then it will tell you also a forecast of rainfall that you are going to have. So for example, if it tells you irrigation time may be reduced by 40 minutes due to the recent events in your area. So you can, out of the 1 hour, 35 minutes, you can reduce 40 minutes out of that because of the rainfall event that you have. Now, here's the sensor-based system, what it is 3 watermark sensors, one at 8, 16, and 24, that explores basically the depth of what you will expect in a peach plant. And this is how it looks. Basically, we have 2 different sensor stakes, one close to the line, irrigation line, and the other close to the side of the middle of the road, between the road and the tree, basically, kind of exploring another area where you will hopefully get some irrigation as well. So when we have the mature orchard, this was established in 2015. That means that we started in 2020 doing experiments, so the 6 years 6-year leaf until basically 7 and 8 year now. It's a cultivar July Prince grafted on Guardian, and the irrigation methods app and sensor. We do have different systems in here, drip and micro sprinkler, but we decided to just focus on the app and sensor right now. So the first results that we have when we were looking into it is trunk cross-sectional area and canopy volume. So here my student, what she was doing is basically measuring the trunk width, and with that she can use a estimation of how much is the area of that circle if you were to cut the tree at that trunk height, right? And then canopy volume, as the name explains, is just an estimation of the canopy size. You can see here in the right side, you have some plants, smaller plants in the left side that are actually MP29 plants, July Prince MP29, and on the right side you have July Prince on Guardian. They quite different. Each experimental plot was comprised of basically 4 plants, and we collected data of the 2 in the middle to avoid any effects from the other plots, basically. So what was the effect of the root stocks in the young trees? As you expect, the trunk cross-sectional area in the y-axis, you can see it goes from 0 to 80. In the x-axis, you have dates. It goes basically 2020, 2021, 2022. And you can see that the differences between Guardian and MP29, Guardian being green and MP29 being orange, was since the beginning. These trees were grafted, these trees were budded and grown by us, so they were handled the same way. And you can see basically that the difference between growth is not that big until around the middle of the second year, but after that it just explodes. You can see the differences between the trees is almost double the size. In the case of the canopy volume, the differences are visual as well. You can see the differences. There are some dips in here where we're doing basically some of the summer prunings and some winter prunings as well. And you can see the difference clearly between Guardian and MP29. Next, when we start looking at the irrigation methods, and we are going to talk about the young trees and the mature trees. So the young trees, again, we have trunk cross-sectional area in the y-axis, and we have the different dates from 2020 to 2022. The app or the sensor, the Smart Irrigation app is black bars. The control is gray, and the sensor is red. So you can see how basically the differences from the beginning, there were not that significant differences. But then second year, you start seeing that the app and sensor-based treatments are actually kind of inching up in comparison to the control that's non-irrigated, just based on rainfall events, basically. And you can see that that difference start growing with time. And then finally, in the third year, around May and June, you start seeing significant differences between the treatments. And this is something that's consistent with what we saw in the previous experiment, looking at non-irrigated plots versus irrigated plots. In the case of the mature trees, where we were looking just at an app-based and a sensor-based, you can see that in here, we just have no significant differences between the two treatments, and it's just quite similar in the case of the trunk cross-sectional area. If you look at the canopy volume in irrigation methods as well, for young trees, the difference that you see for trunk cross-sectional area, you start seeing it also for canopy volume around 2022. So that's quite consistent. In the case of the canopy volume for app versus sensor base, app being the black and sensor base being the red, there was some significant differences between the two in 2021, but that disappeared. So they have not been significant difference. Of course, the sensor base is always a little bit higher, but statistically is not significant different. Now, when you talk about photosynthesis or net assimilation, this is an important measurement for experiments like this because, we're looking for signs or tales that can give us the sign of stress or issues in the plants. And in this case, irrigation, is important for certain seasons. So what we're looking at here is measurement of net assimilation. So net assimilation based on irrigation methods, again, the same kind of graph. You have the app is black bars, the control non-irrigated is gray, and the sensor is red. And then you have net assimilation and the y-axis. You can see that there is really not significant differences until about June of 2022, where you have actually a higher net assimilation for the app and sensor base versus the control. Actually, it's pretty matching to what we're seeing on the differences of growth, where we're starting to see. And if you think about this year specifically, that time of the year actually was very dry. So you can see that probably that was creating some issues of stress that are being able to see with net assimilation. In the case of the mature trees, app versus sensor base, we don't see significant differences across the board for these years. Stem water potential. It is another measurement of that tells us about the stress. What it consists of is a pressure pump, and what it does is basically you put a leaf within the chamber, within this chamber, and you have the petiole of the leaf just sticking out, and then you put pressure inside of the chamber that will basically measure how much pressure it takes to pull some of that sap water out of the leaf, and it will give you a value. So the higher that value, it tells you that the higher the stress of that plant is. So when you think about the range, the values are negative, so it goes from 0 to 2, I believe. And anything from below 1, you kind of consider that the plant is in a stressful situation. So you have the young trees, you have the app base and the sensor base and the control. App being black, the control base gray, and the sensor base red. You can see that there was not really significant differences except to May and June of 2021, where you see that actually the control treatments actually were in a lower value compared with the other ones. So it have a higher stress. Now you can see that the control treatment always had a little bit more, but then you see in June and July that big variation of them. And again, consistently, if you think about it, to the effect of photosynthesis and also the effect of canopy differences between the non-irrigated and irrigated is clearly very, very large. So the photosynthesis and the stem water potential were good signs of probably stress, irrigation stress that was happening on those plants. And in the case of the mature trees, we don't see differences between the app and the sensor base. In the case of yield, that's probably something that you're wondering about. When you have the young trees, as you know, I established those in 2020. So this is a yield for 2022. I apologize the mistake in there, but it's yield for 2022. So that is year 3 of plant, and you can see that the yield was not that large, but there was no difference between the treatments either. In the y-axis, you have pounds, and again the same colors: app being black, sensor base red, and the control gray. Now, in the case of the mature trees, where we're comparing the app versus sensor base, you can see that there was no significant differences either for the years. In 2020, we have about an average of 140 pounds per tree, and then in 2021, 100 pounds, 2022, 110 pounds. So there was no significant difference between the treatments. Now, one thing that we also did is that we actually separated the pipes that were going to the different treatments. So we can actually measure the amount of gallonage of water that we were applying for the different treatments. And we were especially interested in the sensor base because the sensor base was telling us what truly the root zone and the soil were, what was happening in there. So we were following basically the needs of the plants. So the water consumption by young trees, and this is just based on the sensor irrigation, as I mentioned before. Basically just put in the needs based on the sensor irrigation to maintain a water moisture threshold in the soil. So you can see that Guardian versus MP29 on the year of establishment, they were quite similar actually on needs based on the sensor-based method. The Guardian actually kept going with some of that need until November. MP29 stopped requiring more water. In the case of the 2021, and I don't have the 2022 data here, I apologize. You can see that Guardian, it basically shuts off in comparison with MP29. And I think so that is very equivalent to canopy size. You can see that basically you have a bigger canopy, and more likely there's more transpiration of that canopy. So by itself, there will be more requirement of water. It's kind of logical. So you can see how much water it was being used per month in the actively growing months of the year. So we have data for 2021, 2021, and 2022. Now, in the case of water consumption based on the method of irrigation, and this is basically comparing the app versus sensor base, okay? And then you have the young trees and the same thing. So you see that the app versus sensor base in 2020, they are not that different. You can see that the app is sometimes a little bit more than the sensor base in some occasions. But generally speaking, in first year, it's pretty equivalent. Now, when you go to 2021, it's quite interesting because now you start seeing something like the amount of water that is required by the app is actually lower than the sensor. And you can see in the actively growing months of the year that where basically the plant is asking for more. So that's something that was interesting as well. In the case of the mature trees, we're looking at mature trees, and one important thing in here is that we have trees that basically are quite similar on requirement when you look at app versus sensor, but then when you look at the 2021, you can see the differences as well from the sensor versus the app. It's basically based on what was happening at the time on the year. So as a conclusion, the water and broodstocks were more vigorous than MP29 as expected. The MP29 semi-dwarfing broodstocks required less water. The app-based irrigation system used less water than the sensor-based, and we saw that. However, we did have a comparable plant size and comparable fruit yield. Says about 300 to 800 gallons per tree. Of course, that variation based on the different variables that we have. And there was no plant water stress on those. So the Smart Pitch Irrigation app is actually an efficient scheduling tool for pitch production. So I wanted to share with you that we have actually a demo version available. If you go at the Smart Irrigation Apps website, and this is smartirrigationapps.org, you can see that there is an icon for pitch app in development. However, I have asked our developer to have the app available for anyone in this conference that if you're interested to try it out, you can download it in this website and just type it in your cell phone, and you should be able to open the app and create an account. I will encourage you. I will really appreciate it if you do, and I will be excited to see what happens with you guys. Again, if you have any emails or questions, please send me emails to Chavez, and this is my website and also the extension blog. And thank you so much. And I will answer any questions that you may have.
He's not actually online right now, so we really can't do that. I don't know if he was planning. There was some talk about him being online to be able, but apparently he wasn't able to. So, but I do appreciate Dr. Chavez, and he's done some marvelous work, and he looks like it's some very good success. Water is so important to everything that we do. I do have several questions myself that I plan on sending to him through his email from that talk, and I'm sure some of you do as well. So make sure you communicate those to him.